Dear Professor Chomsky, welcome. My name is Duda Alcântara, and it's such an honor to have you here with us in Direitos Já once again. Please tell us a little bit about your perspective about the importance of democracy in the world. Pode começar.
Só aumentar aqui, ok. Pronto, you can start.
Democracy is a frail plant. It's easily trampled. Unless nurtured with care, it can wither and die. It can also be mimicked by artificial constructions, which look superficially like democracy, but lack any real substance. There are all too many examples. Take the United States. The United States prides itself on its leadership of the democratic world. It has long devoted major efforts to promoting democracy. Latin America has been the main target of these efforts. We cannot, however, say that it has been the beneficiary. The most respected scholar of so-called democracy promotion is Thomas Carruthers, who served the Reagan administration in democracy promotion projects and describes his stand as neo-Reaganite. I'll quote him. He finds a very strong line of continuity running through all recent administrations, where democracy appears to fit in well with US security and economic interests. The United States promotes democracy. Where democracy clashes with such interests, it is downplayed or even ignored. All administrations are schizophrenic, he says, in this respect. Carruthers regards US democracy promotion initiatives in Latin America as sincere, though a failure, and a systematic failure. Where US influence was least, progress towards democracy was greatest. Where US influence was strongest, progress was least. The reason, he explains, is that Washington sought to maintain the basic order of what historically, at least, are quite undemocratic societies, and to avoid populist-based change in Latin America with all its implications for upsetting economic and political orders and heading off in a leftist direction. Therefore, the United States would tolerate only limited top-down forms of democratic change that did not risk upsetting the traditional structures of power with which the United States has long been allied. These are all quotes. And it's a fair description of democracy promotion abroad. What about at home? Going back to its origins, the framers of the Constitution were a group of wealthy white men, mainly slave owners. And not surprisingly, they regarded democracy as a threat to proper government. Proper government, they held, should protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. It's the formulation of James Madison, the leading figure in establishing the constitutional system. The major scholarly work on the Constitution is entitled The Framers' Coup, that is, their coup against the democratic aspirations of the population. Nevertheless, by the standards of the day, the American constitutional system represented a significant advance towards democracy, enough so as to arouse deep concern among European statesmen about these subversive tendencies. Turning to the present, mainstream political science has produced many studies on how the democratic system functions. One instructive finding concerns non-voters. A large part of the population, roughly half, doesn't vote. Studies show that their socioeconomic profile resembles that of Europeans who vote for social democratic, labor-based parties. These are lacking in the United States. The American political system is a monopoly of two organizations, Democrats and Republicans, sometimes described as two factions of the ruling business party. The parties have shifted character over time. For a long time, the Republicans have been much more dedicated to their constituency of great wealth and corporate power. That commitment reached quite extreme levels over Trump, who's now in temporary exile, though he virtually owns the party. The difference between the two parties today is well illustrated by the bipartisan infrastructure bill now under debate in Congress. Obviously, has to be funded somehow. On this matter, the parties differ. It's reported by the Washington Post. Congressional Republicans object to tax hikes on the rich or corporations and also rule out other measures proposed by the White House, such as stepped up enforcement on tax cheats by the Internal Revenue Service. No, the White House, meanwhile, ruled out higher taxes on Americans earning under $400,000, including a proposed highly regressive gas tax. So that's the division. One shouldn't, however, succumb to illusions about the Democrats. There is a substantial voting base, mostly young, with a social democratic orientation, what's described in the United States as radical. But the party remains in the hands of more conservative managers who reject social welfare measures, including those that are commonly found elsewhere. The most striking example is healthcare. It's a stunning fact that despite its unique advantages, the United States ranks last among the rich societies in healthcare. The most recent international study of high-income countries, just a few weeks ago, finds that the United States, I'm quoting it, ranks last overall, despite spending far more of its gross domestic product on healthcare. The US ranks last on access to care, administrative efficiency, equity, and healthcare outcomes, but second on measures of care process. This scandal is mirrored in other measures of social justice. And despite majority popular support for universal health care and other social welfare measures, proposals are rejected by the party management. The mechanisms that lead to this outcome are also carefully studied in academic political science, which finds that electability is very closely correlated with funding. And of course, it is the large funders who often operate through untraceable sources. They're the ones whose voices are heard. The result is that a large majority of voters are literally unrepresented, and that there is no relation between their preferences and the votes of their own congressional representatives. Nevertheless, the democratic system still functions sufficiently well so that voters have an influence. That's a serious threat to the party that is more dedicated to the welfare of wealth, extreme wealth, and corporate power. The Republican leadership frankly concedes that it cannot win a popular election, and it can hold power only by a variety of devices that significantly distort the vote in their favor. These already exist and have a powerful effect, as we see regularly. Thus, Trump was elected in 2016, though he was 3 million votes behind. And he came very close to winning in 2020 with a 7 million vote deficit. That's also the regular pattern in Congress. Democrats commonly win the political vote, the popular vote, but are a minority in Congress. These devices are not enough, however, to ensure power for the minority party. That is well understood by the voting base and the leadership. About half of Republicans favor abandoning democracy and holding power through changes in voting rules. And the leadership agrees. In Republican-run states, dozens of laws have recently been passed to restrict voting, specifically aimed at Democratic voters, mostly urban minorities, who are already disadvantaged in the highly distorted electoral system. That's the United States, which can still claim to be a well-functioning democracy by comparative standards. Threats to democracy are also quite serious in the oldest modern democracy, Britain, where the current prime minister has repeatedly shown his contempt for democratic norms. I need not comment here on the fragility of the democratic system that emerged from the military dictatorship in Brazil not long ago and faces very serious threats. We are now about to celebrate the International Day of Democracy, established by the United Nations. The goal certainly merits celebration, and more than celebration, it calls for dedicated and energetic action to ensure that what has been achieved by long struggle is protected, and that it provides the foundation for major advances towards true and substantive democracy, still a distant goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. We won't take more of your time. That will be all for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.